I'll do that right now. Welcome, everybody. As I said, this is part two in the core principles of Jewish renewal. I want to repeat a couple of things that I talked about last week before we move on. First of all, there are some things here that I'm going to be presenting tonight that I don't want to take for granted that everybody knows certain vocabulary or even certain things that I'm going to be referring to. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask by saying, what the heck is, and then fill in the blank. My desire for offering this is to connect us by the lineage all the way back to the Baal Shem Tov, upwards through Reb Zalman and to here in our Zumagog. And tonight I'm going to be talking even more about technology and Reb Zalman's use of technology to bring us up to date here with how we got here as a Zumagog. I know how you got here. You just clicked on the link, but there's a lot more to it than that. And I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of wonderful, wonderful things. First of all, I was just reintroduced to this book. It's called Fragments of a Future Scroll, Hasidism for the Querying Age. That was the original title. And then Fragments for a Future Scroll got added. Why Hasidism for an Aquarian Age? Because it was written during that time when we were singing, when the moon is in the seventh house. Reb Zalman was very, very busy studying and learning from other spiritual traditions and tuning in to what the universe has to offer us at that specific turning, as he calls it, and the paradigm shift that was happening during those times. I want to just address something that came up last week, which was what was Reb Zalman's what was the work that he was doing and why he was doing that work of being a shaliach, a messenger with Reb Shlomo Carlebach, being sent out to universities. Reb Zalman would not have said that he was doing Keruv. He would not have been explaining that he was trying to bring people closer, although that is what one of the purposes was. But over time, his concentration was more on not creating, not making the old new again, but creating something new that this generation could lift from the old one, right? And make use of, make sense of, and make meaning from. I know certainly that happened to you, many of you, and certainly that is what transpired for me. And so let's begin, or re-begin, as we did last week. And again, please don't hesitate. You can put it into the chat, questions, or you can interrupt me at any time. Let's listen to Reb Zalman singing one line from the Shabbos morning liturgy, V'taher libeinu lioftecha be'emet. Purify our hearts so that we may serve you sincerely.
V'taher libeinu, v'taher libeinu, liyavdecha be'yemet. V'taher libeinu, v'taher libeinu, v'taher libeinu, le'ovdecha be'yemet.
V'taher libeinu li'ovdecha be'emet. Purify our hearts to serve you sincerely. This melody is Reb Zalman's melody that he's singing, and as a matter of fact, there's more liturgy. He combines a pasuk, a line from somewhere else, and he puts it together, but I didn't include that because I really wanted to concentrate on this part of it. So I'm going to be sharing tonight somewhat from this book. that I just shared with you. I found out or refound out about this book because I subscribed to Rabbi Jay Michelson's Substack. He's a fantastic teacher and helps make sense of a lot of what's going on in the world right now. I've done meditation classes with him, and he's somebody whose name you should know. So, reading from the preface from the 1975 edition of Fragments of a Future Soul. These are Reb Zalman's words. This is not a finished product. Oh no, let me go back. This book has my byline. This only indicates one part of the act of channeling of the material. All the good in it is divine mind that was active in seer, sage, and saint who came before. So here's what he's saying. He's channeling the masters. He's channeling all the things that he has learned in order to share it with us. This book is an interesting written. He urges us to pick it up and read a line or two, and then marinate in it. That's the kind of word or imagery that Reb Zalman would use. But not to try to read the entire thing at once, because it's impossible. It doesn't read like a narrative. This is not a finished product. The process begins to happen when you, the reader, actualize it in your prayers, meditations, and actions of daily life. This is spiritual sheet music. I love that. This is spiritual sheet music. So we read from it, and we sing the melody of the words, and many of them will begin to feel like they are our own. I'm going to skip now to the end of the book with a afterwards that's written by Arthur Kurzweil. Now, Arthur Kurzweil is a what do you call it when you a book publisher. And Arthur, he edited some of Reb Zalman's books. He's also a fabulous magician, Art Kurzweil. If you ever had the pleasure to see him do his Talmudic conversations while he's doing magic tricks at Kala. So he tells this story, and I'm going to be telling two stories that Reb Arthur shares about Reb Zalman, one now and one to end our session. One day I was walking down the country road at the Elat Chaim Center for Jewish Spirituality, which is where I met Reb Zalman. How many of you were at Elat Chaim at some time? Susan and Miriam and Susan Chaya. When I crossed paths with a woman who looked lost, I approached her and asked if everything was okay, and she told me she had just come out of a private meeting with Reb Zalman, who was there for a week and available to meet with people one-on-one. How was it? I asked with joy and enthusiasm, imagining the transformative encounter she must have had. Disappointing, she said. Do you mind if I ask why? Well, I went to him asking for help, and he had nothing to tell me. Nothing, I asked. He didn't say anything? It was hard to believe. Nothing useful, she replied with moist eyes. I don't mean to pry, I said, but could you tell me what did happen in your private time together? The woman told me she was lonely and looking for her soulmate, my beshert, she said, but that Reb Zalman had nothing to offer. He knows so many people. I figured he could suggest a person or two or offer to make some introductions, but I went away empty-handed. He offered me nothing. Oh, wait a second, I replied. He must have offered you something. No, she said, nothing. It's not that I don't believe you, I replied, but are you sure he didn't say anything? Can you remember anything he told you in response to your request? Well, I told him I've been praying for so long, telling Hashem I'm so lonely, and I want to meet someone. And, I asked, and he told me something of no use. He said I might be praying for the wrong thing. Then he gave me a suggestion. Rather than focusing how lonely I was and praying to find my beshert, I should turn it around. Tell the Almighty that there is a wonderful person out there somewhere who is lonely and looking for their beshert. Pray that they find their beshert. Pray for them. What an extraordinary suggestion, I exclaimed. He might have given you the best help possible. Promise me you'll follow Reb Zalman's advice. He may have given you the key to your quandary. I met the same woman 2 years later, again at Eilat Chaim, and this time she was with someone, glowing. They had recently been married. She whispered to me, Reb Zalman was right. I was praying for the wrong thing. So whether or not you sense that prayer can work like that, certainly Reb Zalman would say that prayer is not like a vending machine where we put our prayers in and we get out what we were praying for. But if you tune in a little bit, you'll pick up on some of the neo-Hasidic or psycho-spiritual dimension of this, which Reb Zalman is picking up on, that, when Miriam is stricken, which is with leprosy, does she pray for herself? Moshe prays for her. And she overcomes. She's relieved of the leprosy, the scales. This is why I always urge us to, when we sing prayers for Birkat Cholim, the prayers for the sick, that if we need a prayer, to tell somebody else, right? So that they might pray on our behalf. This has a certain kind of a power to it, which Reb Zalman knew all about. And so he turns things on its head. I don't know about you, but I grew up with the idea that that's what prayer was all about. Meaning that you put your prayers into the vending machine and you should be getting stuff out. And God, as the man in the heavens with the white beard and the long white hair, what Reb Zalman called a pediatric understanding of God. And so, welcome Scott, welcome Mary, welcome Yael, and welcome Gail, and Mary Rita too. Moshe's here, and Jenny joined us as well. So after last week, I wanted to continue to place us on the You Are Here calendar in the Galactic Mall of how we got here, where we are, and perhaps where we're going as a community. Let's take a look now and listen to what Reb Zalman himself has to say about spiritual technology. He doesn't say it here in this video that I'm going to share with you, but he always talked about compatibility, meaning that the Jewish life and expression that we are leading and articulating now needs to somehow be connected to what came before, and that it needs to be what's called backwards compatible. You've heard that expression, I'm sure. It needs to be backwards compatible. After his video, I'm going to share something so cool with you that I found out also through what Jay Michelson wrote about in his blog. But first, let's hear from Reb Zalman. I think this takes about 8 or 9 minutes. Put your thumbs up if it's okay, if the sound is okay.
And so each generation has to bring up the teaching, the Torah from the past, and make it compatible to the reality maps that they have in the present. So when we talk about God as creator, this God who is the creator, I can't change him. He has done it. The world is as it is. I can't impress on God, I can't plead with God, I can't cajole God. God is the one who even makes poison gas work.
I'm going to stop there for a moment. Right? Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. Sorry. I want you to know that Reb Zalman is talking
And so
about,
each
talking about the beginning of conversation about the four worlds. Asiya, the world of materiality. Yetzira, the world of emotions, feelings, formation. Bria, the world of intellect, of thought. And then finally, Atzilut, the world that is Etzel, nearest to divinity, to the hot fire, right? When he says that we can't change God, there are, of course, many Hasidic stories, famous ones, such as the Baal Shem Tov going to the highest of highs and changing the letters, right? The letters of reality in order to avert a disaster that's coming up. Those kinds of stories are mythic stories. So what Reb Zalman is talking about, we can't change the world as it is created. We certainly can destroy it. But what he's saying is the world was created by a creator, right? That's in the world of Asiya. And we can't change the fact that there are good things and that there are bad things. So when he says, and I hope that some of you got a little bit, ooh, ouch, from that God also creates poison gas, right? That, of course, is leaning into Ishayahu Hanavi, Isaiah the prophet, who writes that God created, right, Asher bara Oseh Shalom uvorei et hara, who created peace and created all not so good things, bad, evil. That line is changed in the daily prayer. We say that sometimes in our prayers. Oseh Shalom uvorei et hakol, that God created everything, as opposed to acknowledge, because nobody wants to wake up in the morning and be reminded that God made poison gas. Remember, our hands are the hands of God. So think what's coming through us is also ascribed to God. Welcome, Marcia and Steve. Okay, so I wanted to stop, and I might stop a couple of more times in order just to clarify some things as he goes through the four worlds. Let's go back to the video.
generation has to bring up the teaching, the Torah from the
It
past,
started again.
and make it compatible to the reality maps that they have in the present. So when we talk about God as creator, this God who is the creator, I can't change him. He has done it. You know, the world is as it is. I can't impress on God, I can't plead with God, I can't cajole God. God is the one who even makes poison gas work. And that's what drives people crazy, but that's the aspect of Asiya, of God. God who is the creator. There's another level. That's the I-thou relationship. That's the place where the heart seeks God, where we think of God as a parent, a loving parent, where we think of God as a friend. And we used to use these words, Avinu, Malkeinu, and so on, Baruch Atah. When I say Atah, I'm speaking to that aspect of God, which is the divine of Yetzirah, of the world of affect and emotions. And that God needs our prayer. As Professor Heschel would say, God in search of man. God needs us. God is lonely. God wants us that we should grow in consciousness greater and greater, so he should have someone with whom to talk in the world, as it were.
So there is a yearning in both directions, right? There's a yearning to be in relationships with divinity, and divinity is also yearning to, as Reb Zalman reminds us, God in search of man, to be in relationship with God's creation, and that is us.
And that is the Shomea Tefillah, the one who hears our prayer.
That's a phrase from our prayers, Shomea Tefillah, and that is a name for divinity, for God, the one who hears prayer.
I'll get back to that.
Thank you.
Then there's another aspect of God, like how God is understood by philosophers, the omni, 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 oh, vast God, and so on and so forth. But I don't even exist in that God. Can you imagine when you think of galactic time, how slow it moves? It takes the sun 360 million years to go once around the galaxy. Can you imagine what kind of a timeline that is? On our level of time, this has no meaning. But if anybody thinks of God less than that, he has a very small God. So you need to have a very strong and open and vast understanding of divine infinity and all these things. But that's the God in the world of Berea. Now, then there's God in the deepest, deepest place of my subjectivity. That's who I am. I am God. I'm not big God. I'm a hologram, a snippet of God. But when the teaching goes that a soul is echelek elokam imal mamish, is a part of the living God, that's what we are talking about. So can you imagine that you really get to the word echad and you don't think there's anything else but that oneness, and you are now, as it were, dipped in that divine oneness. And then at the Amida you get to that too, that divine oneness. Can you imagine what it would be like if a person really at the moment of his death could tune into the divine oneness and dissolve in that like a drop in the ocean?
This afternoon in our meditation, this is Parshat Shalach, and in this Parsha we read of the instructions to wear tzitzit. And there are two different ways of Ashkenazic and Sephardi of the twists and ties and the numbers. And in the Ashkenazi one, it adds up to 26 twists and turns. Adonai Echad. Oh, I'm sorry, 39 twists and ties, which equals Adonai Echad. So the next time that you're saying Shema and you're holding on to the tzitzit, perhaps this image that Reb Zalman just gifted us of us being dipped in divine oneness. Isn't that really delicious, being dipped in divine oneness? So continuing here with his train of thought,
which the Zohar calls lishtava begufa de malka, to be absorbed in the body, the very body of the king. So these are the aspects of God. So where do we go with davvenen? What is davvenology?
Right, so now he's going into different spiritual tools that we have and that he has discovered and that he has created for us to grow in our spiritual life.
Davvenology is the work of Jewish renewal in relation to the spiritual technology that we have. So davvenology says that when you begin the morning blessings, you just don't sit, you move. Zokev kefufim, pokeach even, matir asurim. You say all these blessings and you bring it into your body. You say the blessing, Asher Yatzar, you have created me with hollows and ducts. Rebbeinu Shalom, if the ones that need to be open would clog and the ones that need to be closed would seep, I couldn't exist for a moment. Oh God, the breath that you give me, it is pure. Do you see how we have to get, this is davvenology of the body. And there's the davenology of the heart, which begins with appreciation. Oh, what a beautiful world you created. I give you thanks, my God. Mizmor letodah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If I think of what does God need from us, just the same way as when we do something right, we get endorphins from our body. What are the endorphins for God? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. That's what you give back to God. If you have such a relationship with God of appreciation, then it's not so far-fetched to say that when you drive in the car, you have a conversation as if he's sitting in the passenger seat. She is sitting in the mother of us. Mama God, the one who is the source of Torat Imecha, the Torah that is a mother-like Torah. And then there's the Musar Avicha, the father-like Torah. And you talk to God, your friend, Ne'eman, the most trustworthy friend. And you begin to say, you don't have to do special things. You want to say, well, what a nice morning it is. That's good. Oi, how much traffic there is, Rebbeinu Shalom. You know, when you have, go with me, be with me, Rebbeinu Shalom. Another way of saying it, V'shavti b'Beit Hashem kol yemei chayai. All the time, I'm home with God. I'm not far away. B'Beit Hashem, I'm always B'Beit Hashem. So, you and I are talking together, I through the machine, and you will be watching this through the projector. And you know what? How do I know there's quality control? Because God is listening. God is here with me and with you at this point. Tune into that and you will have a different understanding of how we have to go and meditate. Because, you know, the word meditate people used to think that meditate all comes from the Far East, from Buddhism, from Hinduism. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart. What's meditations? Psalm 19 in the Tehillim, way back. Meditation doesn't come from there alone. Meditation is everywhere there's human consciousness. People meditate. The thing is that we would like God to join us in our meditation, that the divine awareness is in our meditation. Even if you do Vipassana and Eastern meditation, and you watch what arises in your mind, instead of closing yourself in a bubble and getting really tight, open yourself to God. Galui v'yadua, please look in there with me. Now arises again lust. Look at it. Rebbeinu Shalom with me. And it shrinks away. Now there is greed. Now there's jealousy. So all these things that are arising, I'm not only the only one who's aware of that. I want God to be aware of it with me at this point. Then meditation moves so quickly into davvenen, and davvenen into meditation. When you say some of the words like on Shabbos morning, Nishmat Kol Chai, Tevarich et Shimcha Ya Eloheinu, everything that breathes praises your name, Yah, our God. And then you stop for a while. That's so important not to rush on, to stop.
Sound like Jewish renewal? It's important not to rush on, right? But to stop and pause, to listen to the spaces between the words, to allow things to integrate. I want to stop here for a moment to see if you have any comments or questions. I have a couple of things that I wrote down, and then open things up here. First of all, I don't want to assume that everybody knows the term Ribbono Shalom. He's the master of peace, right? He's saying that over and over and over again because this is his diminutive, his favorite term for God, who is his close friend, who's sitting in the chair that in the car next to him, who he's talking to, right? So Ribbono Shalom. Right? He just talked about meditation. So the question arises from the Talmud. It says that the rabbis used to spend an hour before prayer preparing themselves. So we don't know what they were doing, but perhaps they were meditating. Reb Zalman would joke, although I don't know if it was a joke or whether it was for real, that if someone said to him that they've tried to meditate and they're not capable of it, they can't do it, Reb Zalman would say, well, what do you do when you're sitting on the pot? You know? We're not, we just let go in all four worlds. But this back and forth between davvenen and meditation and davvenen and meditation, that's where we have gotten in our Jewish renewal practices the invitation to not try to cover so much ground, but to really dip ourselves into the moment of what, maybe one word or one line repeated over and over again, perhaps. He referred to Nishmat Kol Chai, the breath of all life, right? Praises your name. That's what we daven right after Shulamit's meditation every Shabbos morning. I do that because, I don't know, that's the way that our Siddur ended up being constructed. That was my choice. But sometimes you find out that greater minds than I you were thinking in the same way. And so that feels really good to be in sync with Reb Zalman there. Any comments, questions? I forgot to encourage you to jot down any questions you might have or about anything or any comments as you were listening. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Susan Chaya.
I love how he said, when we say Baruch Hashem, that's endorphins for God. I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it sets something in motion. There's an energy, right, that is felt by the greater awareness, which sometimes we call God. But if we think of our prayers, our songs, our shuckling, our davening, our actions having a ripple effect, absolutely. Shosh and Moshe. And then Linda.
How would you connect his recommendation to not go too fast with the speed of shuckling, the speed of the Amidah that I hear in Orthodox shuls, and even the speed of the Haredis rushing to go somewhere on Friday evening so they can get there?
I'm not sure how Reb Zalman would answer this. But my answer is going to be in protecting the Orthodoxim who pray in that manner very, very quickly. To say that they are so familiar with the prayers, that they're at one with those prayers, and they can say those prayers very, very fast, as if you're playing an entire, concerto in one moment. That there is a. I heard once a teaching that Bach heard entire pieces, classical pieces in one intuitive explosion. And what he did was he stretched it into time. So if you think about them going really, really fast, it is possible that they know it so well that they can bathe in it in way less time than we would need to say the same amount. Okay. A different explanation about the shuckling is that the shuckling sometimes is explained as that, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The candle of God is the soul of man. And that's what the candle does, right? It flickers. And so when we're davening, we're flickering. And prayer is being expressed as fire in that way. So I have been in Orthodox settings, Stiebel-like prayer, I'll call it. I've led it myself as an alternative at a Kala offering or at a Ohala offering at the Rabbinical Convention. And that is very, very different. Right? But there are a lot of people who say, hey, that's very renewal. You're renewing that davening, right? If you've done, so here's one last thing, and then Linda, that if you've done the work, right? If you've studied, and I'm not speaking for the Orthodox team, but I can only assume that they have that like I shouldn't be saying they, that there are those who have studied every prayer, right? And that their prayers, when they davening, they're able to click on hyperlinks that take them to different places where that raises their consciousness while they're continuing their prayers. I've had that experience. And so another possibility there, Moshe. I hope I did your question justice.
Yeah, thank you.
Linda. Oh, yeah, Shosh.
Can I, while I got it? Okay, this is maybe take too long to answer, but it's a question I have when, when Reb Zalman talks about God creating everything, including poison gas, right? It begs the question, and I'm actually helping a cousin of mine write a drash on this. So I said I'd ask about Reb Zalman's perspective on predetermination versus free choice. Is there anything you can point me to learn more about that, or what he has to say about that question? How much is
not offhand, not that specifically.
Okay.
Not that specifically. And I'm not even going to guess.
Okay. All right. I'll look it up. Yeah. Because he
Rabbi Google might be able to point
Rabbi
you in
Google,
that right
because he
direction.
bridges into that with that statement, right? A little bit, that God created everything, including the poison gas.
Well, I'm not sure he's talking about free will there. I think he's just saying that the world was created as it is, and we can't change the fact that you, Shosh, have two eyes, a mouth, and a nose into that you have three eyes, and and that it takes three human beings to make a baby or whatever. We can't change that the natural world from the way it was created. That I think that's all that he's saying.
Okay.
And that we have to ascribe both good and woe, or wheel is the name. I don't know what it even means, but if you look up the translation for Ra, of that God created both Tov and Ra, it oftentimes will be wheel. And we all know that the wheels of the bus go round and round. Linda, save me from myself. Okay.
Yes.
Too much responsibility. I was wondering, in passing, during the course of the lecture, Reb Zalman talked about subjectiveness and said, "I am God," which I didn't take as an egotistical comment. I interpreted it as being a spark of God. Am I correct
Absolutely.
in that?
You're absolutely correct. And I'll tell you a story. I think that's a nice example of that, but I'm trying to remember what is the word for a person who thinks that they're the center of everything or that they're God? A megalomaniac or anybody? I need the word in order to tell the story.
There are too many of them.
Narcissist?
What's that?
Narcissist?
Well, it could be a narcissist, but there is another word for it.
Ego,
What's,
Megan,
Oh,
ego,
man.
maniac.
You're the most.
Trump? Just saying.
Okay. It's a person who thinks that they're God. What's the word?
A surgeon.
Okay. All right. This is what I should expect to get from you guys. All right. Let's. I'm gonna. Maybe I'll remember it. But it's a story that Rami Shapiro tells about himself in rabbinical school, and you've heard me tell. Many of you have heard me tell the story before. Okie doke. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So let's move on here to this wonderful. This is a small part of something that Reb Zalman wrote in January of 2006. So remember that when I first met Reb Zalman, we're talking around this time period. I got smicha in 2012, so maybe around 2005. And when Reb Zalman, then and way before then, he would be recording all of his speech, all talks, right? And he would do it on a cassette and then upload it somehow to a disc or whatever. You know, he was using the most basic and now prehistoric types of computer kind of stuff. So this is what he writes about. He says, this is a parable on the state of the Jewish mythic world after my hard drive crashed. My hard drive and motherboard crashed. If you have experienced this breakdown of the extension of your memory, these tools which hold your information, you can feel with me how the invisible means of support of the cyber world can be suddenly taken from you. This can give one a moment of computer-related depression and a grieving for the now forever lost files you failed to back up. I'm sure we've all experienced that. And as you remember what you have lost, you want to do what you can to restore everything to the status quo ante quem, which means like as it were, so that your life may continue interrupted. And some of us try to do that, but if you had an old version of Windows or DOS or System 6 Mac, and now, as you consider the restoration, you can already get a Pentium motherboard, a faster net surfing modem, and the latest edition of Windows XP or Mac OS X. In fact, you're not merely restoring everything as it were before. You're building a new and broader, even better platform for your information base. At the same time, you want to be sure that the new system can handle the old software applications which you need to reestablish so that the backups will work back in. That is a fabulous definition of Jewish renewal. You want to be sure that the new system can handle the old software applications which you need to reestablish so that the backups will work back in. In other words, your new system has to be downward compatible while being the best you can get together at this time. Capiche? Right? So Reb Zalman would say at the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is the time when we download a new operating system, right? So we go through Elul, we do all the teshuvah work, the soul accounting work that we do, and then Rosh Hashanah, the new system is ready to go, right? But what he's saying here, it needs to be compatible with the old system because you know that when you install a new system, it's on top of the old system. None of the files are lost, although we all have had that experience, right? But the files, hopefully, that we need are kept. I keep a picture of Reb Zalman here to my left. He's smiling. I feel his presence all the time. He gets such nachas out of the Zumagog because he was so technologically advanced that he loved to tinker and he loved all of this stuff that he would really love. And I asked Renee, do you think Reb Zalman would have come to Moshe? And I think the answer is definitely yes, when he was, just to check it out for sure, to see what we were up to and really, really love what we're doing. Alrighty, we're starting to come in for a landing. Okay. He used the expression before quality control. You remember that? And so Reb Zalman often would say, he would teach and he would chuckle a little bit. And he might say that this conversation is being monitored for quality control. So for those of us here who are graduates of the Hashpa'ah spiritual direction program, or our pastors, or if we or all were touched by Reb Zalman, I mean, what a Reb Zalman thing to say, right? That the GPS, the godly positioning system, where we are at any moment, is under quality control. by divinity herself, right? That there is someone to watch over you, over us. There is some greater consciousness that is aware of everything we do, which is why I was so blown away the first time I heard him talking about the word yir'ah, which oftentimes is translated as fear, but it also is awe. So fear and awe, they really sit together. He tells a story that what if you walked into a room, right, and you there was no one there, right? You would think you were alone and you could do whatever you want to, but then suddenly you realize there was somebody there tucked away in the corner that you didn't see that was watching you this whole time. That what if we are behave with that kind of knowing that we are seen, and there are stories about this too, of not doing something. The king offers a prize of the princess's hand to anyone who can go and kill a deer, I think it is. But the thing is, no one can see you do it, right? And there are princesses. After princesses, they go and they bring back whatever it is that the king, wanted them to bring back, and the king rejects every single one of them until finally someone comes back empty-handed, and the king questions him, why are you coming back empty-handed? And so the prince's answer is that I couldn't go anywhere where I wasn't seen. So even when we're alone, we're being seen. Fear and awe, two sides of the same coin. So Reb Zalman is now going to, in this last video, talk a little bit about being, the quality control that this conversation and this Moshe learning session is being monitored for quality control.
How do I know there's quality control? Because God is listening. God is here with me and with you at this point. Tune into that and you will have a different understanding of how we have to go and meditate. Because, the word meditate people used to think that meditate all comes from the Far East, from Buddhism, from Hinduism. May the words of my mouth.
So this is somewhat repetitive from before.
Meditation
He'll go further
of
here
my
out.
heart. What's meditations? Psalm 19 in the Tehillim, way back. Meditation doesn't come from there alone. Meditation is everywhere there's human consciousness. People meditate. The thing is that we would like God to join us in our meditation. That the divine awareness is in our meditation. Even if you do Vipassana and Eastern meditation, and you watch what arises in your mind, instead of closing yourself in a bubble and getting really tight, open yourself to God. Galui v'yadua, please look in there with me. Now arises again lust. Look at it. Rabbi Shalom with me. And it shrinks away. Now there is greed. Now there's jealousy. So all these things that are arising, I'm not the only one who's aware of that. I want God to be aware of it with me at this point. Then meditation moves so quickly into davvenen, and davvenen into meditation. When you say some of the words like on Shabbos morning, Nishmat Kol Chai, Tevarich et Shimcha Ya Eloheinu, everything that breathes praises your name, Yah, our God. And then you stop for a while. That's so important, not to rush on, to stop. We had a wonderful holy teacher, and Rebbe Huva will tell you more about the Holy Piasetzner Rebbe and his way of hashkata, quieting the mind and being just Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, to be in the divine presence and to experience that. That's part of davenology. So some of that we can do when we have a minyan. Sometimes we don't have a minyan. We only have a few people. But you know what? one of the important things that we have been teaching is socialized meditation. It's not only what's happening in your own consciousness, your own mind, but it's in the sharing and spiritual intimacy with people. So imagine you read a paragraph and your friend who sits next to you, not opposite to you, but right next to you at your side, closes her eyes and does the video on what you are doing the audio for. And then you switch around. And then the feeling that you get is that you will love each other a lot more when you do this together, and that in spiritual intimacy you will experience a lot more than when you sit just by yourself. There are all sorts of ways of davenology, and for this I wrote a little booklet called Gate to the Heart, and see if you can have it there and exhibit so that you might be able to get it. I've created some other resources for people to be able to help them with davvenen. One is a CD that has Hebrew for one ear and English for the other ear. It sounds strange, but when the left hemisphere gets the English and the right hemisphere gets the Hebrew, another kind of davvenen takes over with you, and then you can join into it. So we have all kinds of resources. It's good to learn nigunim, because if you sing some of those melodies before you go into davvenen, you know, many people think that you need only verbal prayer, but every time you sing a nigun and you go to a higher point in the nigun, and it doesn't have to be a fancy nigun, join me for a moment. I'm going to take the melody of Hava Nagila, but slow, very slow. Yai dai 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 dai, hai dai 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 dai, hai dai, yai dai dai, yai di da da dai, hai dai, hai da dai, hai dai, da 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 dai, hai dai. Dari dai dai ra da da da, ya da dai di da da dai, ya da dai di da da dai, hai dai da da dai dai, hai di da da dai, hai dai dai da dai dam, ha da dai dai da da dam. I die da 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 die, I did da da dum. I da da die, da da die, da da die, da da die. I plead with you, Ribbon Shalom, be with me. In my life it would be so good to know you with me. Ay, 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 ay. Halavai, may it be so. Ay, ya, da, 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 da. So you see what I mean? A nigun is a prayer in itself if you know the right kind of nigunim. And I'm not talking about yeshiva rock right now. So all this is really important.
I'm going to pause right there. That was delicious, wasn't it? I bet you never heard Hava Nagila sung that way before. I'll come back to the end of that part of the video because it'll help bring us to a Chatima and end. Dan, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I'm curious about this so-called quality control, monitoring, what that refers to, because if we can't, what's being controlled or monitored, you can't change the world, you can't change creation, physics, chemistry, that sort of thing. It all exists like that. So maybe is he referring to changing yourself? If we're being monitored, there's a relationship with God that you can't affect God, you can't affect the world, but you can change yourself or modify yourself because you're being seen, watched, listened to, in relationship.
Certainly think that's part of it. Yeah, I think each of us will have to make sense of that for ourselves. But I think for you, Dan, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Anybody else? I have a couple of things that I jotted down. Hashkafa. You remember he mentions that? Quieting the mind. This is a term that the Piazetzna Rebbe, that's the Rebbe Shapira of the Warsaw, the Rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. He wrote a lot about meditation, and this was a term that he used. So it's a term that we're all familiar with if we've done other kinds of meditation, for sure. Mindfulness meditation, to arrive at a place that is outside of the ego, of expanded awareness, where awareness itself, perhaps it's awareness itself, Dan, that is monitoring us, our conversation, for quality control. Another thing that phrase that he used was spiritual intimacy. So that is the title of Reb Zalman's doctoral thesis, in which turned into a book of of the relationship between the Rebbe and the Rebbe's Hasidim, where the Rebbe's Hasid follower would come with a little, petek, a piece of paper with a question on it that he wanted to bring to the Rebbe. You can't bring it directly to the Rebbe, but you have to give it to the Rebbe's, secretary, and the secretary goes through the questions, and then you can get a one-on-one with the Rebbe, depending upon how much time the Rebbe has. But the whole purpose of it being is that the Rebbe will sit with you and listen, and to your deepest yearning, your needs, your concerns, and then hopefully channel some kind of guidance that would be helpful. Which is where the whole story of Reb Zalman, telling the woman, pray for the other person, that is all part of this larger chapter of Reb Zalman's work on spiritual intimacy. And certainly it's all grounded in a relationship with a personal God. If you are not in that place, you're not in that place. If you want to explore that, how to get there, then let's talk about that. But we won't talk about that. We'll sit together, and it would be my role as rabbi, as spiritual director, to guide you to a place where you begin to sense that which connects everything and everyone, and everything that was, is, and will be. And that's a mouthful. He's talking about, he was really demonstrating a hashpa'ah session, a spiritual direction session, which is what one might do in meditation for oneself. In other words, you see what arises, and then he was saying, Rabbanu Shalom, and then he identified things, lust, greed, yearning, I want to be in relationship with you. So look at this. Help me to look at this, he's saying, to Rabbanu Shalom, so that I might understand myself in relationship to this part of my story, that perhaps I need to move on from this. I have to integrate it so I'm not held by something that I want to be liberated from. That too is part of the hashpa'ah process that the person who's coming for spiritual direction might be looking to do. So this whole subject of spiritual intimacy arises of Reb Zalman's study of the Hasidic world that he grew up in, of course, but of course in later years was working on his doctorate. Linda, what you got, and then I'm going to finish up here.
Okay. Um, I was going to tell a story, but I don't think it's necessary anymore. For me, I cannot experience spiritual intimacy unless I'm having an emotional reaction to the service. I can't just sit there and be distant from what's happening around me. I have to find a way to feel it, not just do it. And it doesn't matter how it comes. I'm sometimes surprised when it comes because some of the simplest prayers. I've had occasion for 2 Fridays in a row to experience Jewish Renewal in person again because the founder of Jewish Renewal down here passed away. So I went to pay a Shiva call, and then the following week I went for services. And because it didn't take a year and a day to get there, I went again. Um, and I cried because I've missed it so much. And watching it on Zoom does not elicit the same feeling. During COVID, we were all on an equal playing field. It was the only way we could do it. And people struggled to find their connection on a screen. But once in person became available again, I ran. I ran immediately because I needed to be in the room where it happens.
Understood. Thank you. Alrighty. Let's listen to the last part of Reb Zalman, and then the last story that Arthur Kurzweil tells. And then maybe we'll go out singing Hava Nagila very slowly.
There is the daily davvenen consciousness that goes as follows. If you don't have 5-minute Shabbos in the early afternoon when you get really drowsy and the energy cycles, don't run for the other cup of coffee or the stimulant. Sit back a little bit and reflect. Your body tells you at the same time, I can't be always in the sympathetic nervous system of fight and flight and rush and do. Sometimes I have to lean back a little bit. And this leaning back is not wasting time. It is coming again to that source. For with thee is the source of life, and thy light do we see light. Ki imcha mikor chaim be'orcha nira or. That's so important to be able to do that for a little while when you are getting a little bit tired. It is important to make a broche over everything that you do, you eat. It is important to remember what the mezuzah is trying to say. You're going from one realm of life into another realm of life. Could you imagine if a person would come home from work and really touch the mezuzah? I'm not talking about kissing. Kissing is wonderful, yes. But touching the mezuzah and saying, what do you teach me? And the mezuzah says, it's Tuesday evening, but do you know what? It's really Wednesday, the beginning of Wednesday. Leave Tuesday behind. Meet your mishpacha. You're moving from the weekday stuff, from the work stuff, into the home stuff. That's what the mezuzah helps you with transitions. You go out in the morning, the mezuzah helps you in transitions. You're no longer at home, now you're going to be driving. You have to be up, and your vigilance has to be there. You have to pay attention to everything. Do you see what I'm saying? These mitzvahs that we have, like tefillin, to bring our action and our heart into the service of God, and like a talis to wrap ourselves in, and our thoughts to be governed by the tefillin sheb berosh. There's a wonderful story about a Rebbe who was being arrested, and he came out to the people who arrested him with this film, and the people just were afraid of him. So the Hasidim asked Reb Zalman, how come that they fell back? And he says, because it is written that the people, nations of the world will see the name of God on you, and they will be in respect for you. So they said, but why is it that we also had tefillin and they didn't get so excited over them? He says, because you only had the tefillin on the head. But when the Gemara says, Elo tefillin sheberosh, those are the tefillin that are in the head. So if you put them on in the morning and you can keep them in the head for the rest of the day, what a wonderful thing that would be. So these are the things I want to tell you about renewal. We live in a new paradigm. Our davvenen is not so much how many words you will recite, but how much energy and consciousness do you put in, and how much time do you spend. If you were to ask yourself, how old are you? You would give me your chronological age. And if I were to ask you, how old are you emotionally? We don't quite live up to our chronological age. Mentally we might, but not emotionally. If I were to ask spiritually, how old are you? Do you think you could get a whole year together? All the time that you spend doing your spiritual work. So these are the things I want to leave with you. And Jewish renewal is not a denomination. It permeates all kinds of denominations. Wherever people are serious about being Jews as part of the planetary wholeness and want to serve God, that's where Jewish renewal is active. I give you all kinds of brachas. Bless you. Kol tov.
Nice, huh? You know, Reb Zalman died a number of years ago, or 10 years ago already, and so the current students in the rabbinical programs and the other programs didn't have the kavod, to sit at Reb Zalman's feet. And Devorah, you and I, we talk about this sometimes. But this is one way that you can sit with Reb Zalman. And there's so many videos of him teaching. And, I was not one of Reb Zalman's students. I studied with his students, so I got secondhand Reb Zalman. But sometimes when he was teaching, and then, of course, when I got to lead Shabbaton with him, I got it firsthand. But certainly for anyone who wants to get their shot of Reb Zalman, there's so much material online. So let me close with the story. And by the way, thank you so much, everyone, for being with me tonight and, of course, last week. I hope that I've done this title of the core principles of Jewish renewal justice. There's so many things I could have covered. And these are the things that I was drawn to. So it's a little taste, right? A little taste. So at the end in the postscript, Arthur Kurzweil writes the following. During another week at Eilat Chaim, Reb Zalman was a guest and led the davvenen on Shabbos morning. When he got to the mourner's Kaddish, Reb Zalman, who was quite gifted musically, began chanting the Kaddish in a New Orleans funeral march style. He snapped his fingers as he sang. That day, there was a woman in attendance who had recently lost her father and was saying mourner's Kaddish for him. And she told a few people after the service she was deeply offended, but what she felt was Reb Zalman's inappropriate recitation of this most serious prayer. Word got to Reb Zalman about the woman's anger, and he decided to try to smooth things over. Reb Zalman apologized to the woman, explaining he didn't mean to offend anyone, and then he told her a story. He recalled that during the year when he was saying Kaddish for one of his parents, he walked into a small Hasidic shul in Brooklyn and nobody there knew him, but he was asked to leave the davvenen, which he did. And when he got to the repetition of the Amidah and chanted the Kedusha, the holiest part of the service, he chanted it to the tune of Ave Maria. None of the Hasidim knew the source of the melody. But after the davvenen was finished, a few Hasidim went over to Reb Zalman and said they had never heard such a moving, beautiful Kedusha. Reb Zalman, upon finishing the story, looked at the offended woman and said, "You see, tunes are tunes. They belong to the Almighty. They are in the universe. If the Hasidim had known where I got that tune, they would have thrown me out. Instead, they were touched by its beauty. And the whole thing flipped. You could see it in her face as her whole body smiled. Another paradigm shifted. So there we have it. Reb Zalman flipped things on their heads. And at the same time, respecting the tradition where he came from, leaving us with a new way and new spiritual technology to be in relationship with each other and with our God. Sing it with me.